Hello, everybody. All right, welcome to the Mikestand. Today is, of course, Tuesday, January 21st, 2025. So I hope everybody's having a good week thus far. Of course, we're going to give people a chance to come in, come in, before we get started. Let's see. So, yeah, of course, if you can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and/or ask questions, and I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Um, so, with that being said, of course, let me just take care of some things here real quick. Just see if we can at least let some people know that I'm on. See if they will pop in to say hi. La 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 la. Alrighty then. So there we go with that. All right. So yeah. So basically, I've been watching, of course, today I finished off 1932 of some of the shorts. Got a couple of Fleischer stuff in there. Got a couple Betty Boop cartoons in there. Got watch Scrappy from Columbia, Flip the Frog from Ubi Works. Celebrity Productions. So and even got a Mickey Mouse cartoon in there. So, hmm. uh, you know, um, so I'm now done with, of course, 1932, which means we're getting into 1933, which means, of course, we're going to be starting to get some Popeye cartoons watching in there pretty soon too. You know, um, so let's see now. So yeah, we're almost at the 3 minute mark here. So guess I'll go ahead and start talking about what's on tap for tonight. So tonight, of course, I got a couple of articles I'm gonna go over here, including Nico Nico apparently shutting down its adult art service due to what they're claiming is the current social environment and international situation. So that I guess the puritanical attacks, I believe, is what they're talking about from the West. Um, as well as, and then I also will be going over an article from MeTV. That's an article we'll be doing from Bounding in the Comics, and then we'll also be doing an article from MeTV Tunes, in which we'll look back on the career pairing of Dawes Butler and Don Messick, and look back at a number of of course, a number of times they were paired up, in cartoons. So we'll look at that. We'll also have the wrestling wrap up. We'll get caught up on all the latest in WWE, AEW, and TNA. We got some movement. In terms of some people coming, some people going. Talk a lot about that. Also, of course, we'll have this day in each history. So, with that being said, without any further ado, one more friendly reminder, of course, if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the screen, see if we can get some more friendly people here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and/or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started then. Let me pull up the first article we're going to go over here. Let's see now. Yeah. Right. All right. So here's the first one we're going to go over for, a lot of it for like manga fans in particular. All right, so Japanese social media network Nico Nico announces shutdown of adult art service, uh, in small quotes, Nico Nico Shunga, due to current due to quote the current social environment and international situation. Um, Article by Spencer McCulley, published back on, of course, January 18th. Now, this is probably in response to like pressures from the West, from the woke crowd in the West. Um, you know, with the kind of the puritanical attacks on their art and all that. Um, but let's get into this. As a new wave of forced puritanism um, continues to creep its way into the Japanese economic sector, local social media network Nico Nico has announced that they will soon be shuttering their adult art oriented quote in smaller quotes Nico Nico Shunga service due to quote the current social environment and international situation unquote. So this particular thing here is from the ladies of the Hero Association that hit the beach on Yusuke Murata's cover page to One Punch Man, Volume 25, Drive Night. So, one of the most popular social media networks within the land of the rising sun, Nico Nico, was founded in 2006 as a video sharing service with its noted ability to allow live streams of concerts or anime, giving it a particularly advantage within its home nation. In 2009, the service would extend its offerings with a Nico Nico Sega, um, an image board style sister operation, which functioned as a platform for artists, both amateur and professional, to share their works and engage with fans. And here's a scene from Annie shows off her newest fashion pickup on Eito Shimosuke's cover of Shimoneta, A Boring World Where Concept of Dirty Jokes Doesn't Exist. And in providing a space for those with more adult tastes, 2 years later, the Nico Nico Sega service would launch its own imprint service known as Nico Nico Shunga, thus allowing for artists of R15 plus content to enjoy the same social networking freedoms as their safe for work peers. Now, mind you, in case you're wondering, what RF, obviously that's like R17 here in the States. It's just that in Japan, they deem 15-year-olds old enough to be able to handle adult content. So that's just again a different countries' policies. So, in parentheses here, despite the title, content that receives an R15 rating from Japan's Elrin Ratings Board is not marketed towards young teenagers. The number is instead meant to indicate that the content should only be viewed by people over the age of 15. So, yeah. In reality, an R15 is more equivalent to American TV Parental Guideline System and I think they meant to say picture, not potion. Motion Picture Association's respective TVMA or R ratings. Yeah, and that's kind of what I said. Like in Japan, it means that those over the basically, if you're over 15, you're deemed older. Basically meaning if you're 16 or 17, you're old enough to handle the content. Whereas here in the States, like over 17 a lot of times. To put it in more Western terms, imagine if YouTube owned and operated both a standard and an adult-only version of Tumblr, minus all the tired discourses. Here's another. So here's Katahara Sayaka is ready to call the next match on Daromeon's cover of Kenren Omega, Volume 17. However, it seems those who found a home on Nico Nico Shunga will soon find themselves in search of relocation, as on January 16th, which would have been last Wednesday, I believe. Let's see. Last Thursday. The overall Nico Nico parent company published a blog post to their official website informing users that they quote will be discontinuing unquote the service by month's end. Now that's the thing. If they did say that the site was marketed specifically towards older audiences, I don't even really see why they should be shuttering. Quote, we have been providing the, in smaller quotes, Nico Nico Shunga service since August 2011, with the aim of creating a separate space within the illustration corner of Nico Nico Sega, unquote, explaining the company of their decision. As machine translated by DeepL, quote, however, after careful consideration of the current social environment and international situation, we have decided that it is difficult to continue the service in its current form, and so we have decided to discontinue the service. We would like to thank everyone who have used the service so far and apologize for the sudden announcement, unquote. Basically, the problem here with this is that they're bending the knee. They're bending the knee most likely to the woke Westerners who keep crying about certain material being certain things that are not, because it sounds like this site was actually specifically separated from the main site to where people knew what they were getting into, and unless you may have had people who were getting in there who weren't supposed to be there, there's no reason that this site should, especially if it was a site that was popular and was used quite a bit. There's no need unless you're kowtowing to a minority because for whatever reason, anyways, as I said, if feel free to comment and or ask questions if anything here grabs your attention. So per Nico Nico, the Shunga service will finally close its doors at 2 p.m. local time, GMT +9, on January 29th, after which time all of its contents will be fully and totally deleted. So basically, for those who do have content on there, for those artists, they're gonna have to either move it themselves or risk having it deleted and losing it forever. That's but it basically sounds like the people who run Nico Nico were pressured into this, and that's just not right. Further, while users who uploaded any such mature content to Nico Nico Shungo service prior to the shutdown will not be penalized for having done so. The company did confirm that going forward, quote, illustrations that are judged to contain sexual or radical content that exceeds the previous Nico Nico Sego R15 standard will be deleted, and usage restrictions such as prohibition of illustration posting will be implemented. And here's a Natsumi strolls by while her mom catches some rays on Mine Yoshizaki's color pinup of Kuroro Gunso, as we know it as Sergeant Frog. Let's see. Drawing their statement to a close, Nico Nico ultimately added, quote, in addition, Nico Nico is working on reviewing the scope of restrictions for the entire service from Wednesday, October 30th, 2024, in order to continue operating and providing services. Quote, even if the content does not meet the previous R15 and deletion criteria, we may take necessary measures, including deletion, based on comprehensive judgment of the content. They concluded, quote, we appreciate your understanding. We look forward to your continued support of Nico Nico. Again, this company's been up for a lot longer than around a lot longer than these wokies have been crying baying at the moon. So I don't know why they really felt the need to kowtow to them. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who would agree with that assessment. Let's see. Lilisa Amano shows off her costume and non-costume appearances on Yu Hashimoto's color page to 2.5 dimensional Seduction Chapter 1, The New Member. Notably, Nico Nico did not explicitly cite a specific motivating incident as to why they have chosen to shut down their shunga brand. Now, as I said, that's why it's more speculative. It's more likely they were pressured by some people in the West. They're pressured by some woke, corporate, wokies in the West, or some white knighters from the West who just felt like they had the right to impose their moral superiority on Japan. But thankfully, their above mention of, quote, the scope of restrictions for the entire service, unquote, does provide some potential insight into their action. As explained by the company in the relevant scope review announcement, the entire reason Nico Nico has began down a path towards self-censorship was, quote, due to changing times and the diversification of devices. A need has arisen for a comprehensive approach that also takes into account overseas laws. So, yeah, basically, international laws are how they're. Maybe some of this is also linked to the whole stuff going on with TikTok and all that as well. Sadly, Nico Nico is not the first Japanese company in recent months to find themselves forced into dropping their perfectly legal adult content offerings due to pressure from outside nations. As previously reported, thanks to ultimatums delivered by various international credit card processors, popular online doujinshi retailer, and we covered this one, Melon Books, iconic Tokyo-based book retailer Tora Noana, and How to Print Manga Archive Manga Library Z, have all had to close the doors on their adult content businesses under threat of having their financially vital digital payment processing services totally and unequivocally revoked at a moment's notice. Yes, and we covered that, and that was wrong too. I mean, that's kind of stupid even on the credit card company because basically they make the money off the fees, right? That they get off the off the charges or whatever and yet you want to close your door to that revenue just because you want to be woke, you want to be a white knight and all that. Oh, this looks like something from Sailor Moon. See, I transforms into her magical girl identity of Yadokari Genpachiro's cover to High School Girl Beautiful Angel Affection Heart Manga Production Version 2020 Manga Library Z. While it's unknown if such credit card processors also had a hand in play in Nico Nico Shunga's closure, it's clear that the entirety of these events, and those sadly still to come, all stem from the same tree of Western busybodyism. And I would have to agree with that assessment. I think Spencer right there, that last statement was right. It's like you got a lot of these people in the West who are trying to be white knights and just you know trying to tell everybody else, including the country of Japan, how what they should think of as obscene. You know, in some ways, I'm glad, and hopefully this will get slowed down a bit with Trump, with some of Trump's, executive orders like the freedom of speech. You know, hopefully, some of this censorship will kind of cool off a little bit too. Um, but I don't know if it'll be quite as much there because it's like, yeah, it might work in the states here, but other countries may not. And a lot of this is coming from the credit card companies too, threatening to basically stop their payment processing services, which again is why maybe the Japanese should start utilizing their own credit card companies and getting people to start at least within Japan there. But let's move on to. Wow, we got up to 23 minutes, but that's okay. I think I still knowing that still got some stuff to do anyways. Let's move on to the next article here. The next article I was going to go over, which is from. Oh, hold on. Oh, I just got to take yours on real quick here. All right, so there we go with that. Oh, there's even another. So if I feel there's. Wow, they even put up another one. But I'll go back and share that. Depending about. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and move on to the next article we're going to do here. I may even do another one here, depending on, I'll see where we're at on time when I get there. All right, so 10 times Don Messick and Dawes Butler were the ultimate dynamic duo, best friends on and off screen. Article published by MeTV Toon staff, published earlier today. So there you see, of course, Yogi Bear and Boo Boo. So voice actors Dawes Butler and Don Messick began their journey as a dynamic duo at MGM. It all started when Butler was double booked and unavailable to perform Droopy Dog for Tex Avery. Butler then recommended fellow voice actor Don Messick. From there, the two were often paired together on MGM cartoons, and when William Hanna and Joseph Barbera created their own animation studio, they recruited Messick and Butler to be their primary voice actors. And yes, they were on a number of Hanna-Barbera stuff, of course, during that period. From there, the two played hundreds of characters and were often paired together to portray best friends and also bitter adversaries. And we'll get into all that in a moment here. At the end of their careers, the two considered each other lifelong best friends and colleagues. Let's take a look at this dynamic duo's many cartoon dynamic duos. All right, so the first one here, of course, is probably the one most people would remember, recognize. Yogi Bear, voiced by Dawes Butler, and Ranger Smith, voiced by Don Messick. So some say they are enemies, but no one knows Yogi Bear better than Ranger Smith. While they are often at odds with each other, Ranger Smith and Yogi slowly become friends throughout the movies and spin-offs. Messick voiced Ranger Smith and used his normal speaking voice for the character, while Butler voiced Yogi Bear. And of course, oftentimes, they were primarily adversaries because Yogi behaved naughty in the park, oftentimes trying to snatch picnic baskets, and of course, Ranger Smith would have to kind of corral him in. But there are also times when they worked together as well, like in Yogi's First Christmas. Like in as they said, some of the spin-offs, including Yogi's Treasure Hunt. They often you'd often see them working together too. So, and you could also tell oftentimes that Ranger Smith would cared for Yogi. So number two, the true dynamic duo of the show, Messick also voiced Yogi's best friend Boo Boo. So yeah, Yogi and Boo Boo, Dawes and Don, doing Yogi and Boo Boo right there. And another Hanna-Barbera classic, of course, Wally Gator and Mr. Twiddle. Wally Gator and Mr. Twiddle had a similar dynamic to Yogi and Ranger Smith, but Mr. Twiddle was more sweet and understanding, wanted Wally to be a good gator, and enjoy living at the zoo. Yeah, well, and throughout the 60s, right? Throughout the 60s, you did have a number of dynamics like this, Yogi and Ranger Smith, Mr. Twiddle and Wally Gator. We talked, of course, about another pairing in Magilla Gorilla and Mr. Peebles on the Magilla Gorilla show. So we've had some interesting, of course, there was also Squiddly Diddly and the aquarium guy. But Butler voiced the ever-escaping Wally Gator, and Messick played his enthusiastic, slightly exhausted zookeeper, Mr. Twiddle. Pixie and Dixie. One of the earliest Hanna-Barbera cartoons was led by Messick and Butler, who voiced the precocious Meese. Butler voiced Dixie, and Messick voiced Pixie. of course, Pixie, Dixie, and Mr. Jinx was one of these segments from the Huckleberry Hound show. Of course, when the Huckleberry Hound show originally premiered back in 1958, of course, Yogi Bear was also on that was a segment on there as well, until Yogi got so popular that that he got his own show in 1961. So, yeah, Pixie and Dixie and Mr. Jinx from the Huckleberry Hound show. Let's see, the Slag Brothers, Gravel and Rock, of course, from the Wacky Races series in 19. I think it was 1969, I believe. Messick and Butler teamed up once again to play two dynamic duos on Wacky Races. One of those duos, Rock and Gravel, the Slag Brothers. And if you notice there too, the Slag Brothers, who they remind you of. I'll give you a sec. All right, the Slag Brothers would remind most people of Captain Caveman. So, I guess even before Captain Caveman debuted, of course, that's probably where Captain Caveman got the design. They got the design Captain Caveman from Rock and Gravel here. They drove the Boulder Mobile and won the most races out of all the racers. Hence the number one on their Rock Mobile there. The number two, the Gruesome Twosome. It's the Gruesome Twosome riding in the Creepy Coupe. Another Wacky Races duo, Butler voiced Big Gruesome, the big guy there. And Messick voiced Little Gruesome. I guess the little guy in the driver's seat there. Between the two of them, they also voiced other characters on the show, including Muttley, Professor Pat Pending, Dum Dum, Red Max, Sergeant Blast, Peter Perfect, and Rufus Roughcut. Again, these guys were brought in to voice many characters. And if you watch these cartoons enough, you'll probably be able to pick up the voice work. The more you watch, the more you listen, right? Let's see, number 7 here, Muggsy and Boo. It's Funky Phantom time. Using the same voice he used for Snagglepuss, Butler voiced Jonathan Wellington Muggsy Muddlemore, the Phantom in the Funky Phantom. Using his superior animal impressions, Messick voiced Boo the cat ghost. Mm-hmm. Yes, and we know that not only did Don Messick do a number of anthropomorphic animal characters, but he also did a lot of the regular animal characters on a lot of cartoon series too. Well, actually, no, I'm actually thinking of Frank Welker as well. Anyways, Peter Potamus and So-So. Butler used his impersonation of Lippy the Lion to voice Peter Potamus, and Messick voiced his monkey sidekick, So-So. Right. And number 9, you got Astro and Elroy from the Jetsons. What duo is more dynamic than a boy and his dog? Butler captured the rambunctious childhood energy of Elroy by enlisting the help of his sons. Messick, once again, put his dog impression chops on display as the lovable Astro. You could even argue that Astro and Scooby-Doo had some similarities there. Rough and Ready. Now apparently they don't have a picture. Rough and Ready was the first cartoon that Hanna-Barbera ever produced back in 1957. It even predates Huckleberry Hound. But one of Butler and Messick's first pairings under Hanna-Barbera was for their very first independent cartoon, the Rough and Ready show. Shocker to no one, Messick played Ruff the dog. Butler played Reddy the cat. While the two characters don't reappear often throughout Hanna-Barbera universe, Butler and Messick revised their roles in a cameo on Yogi's Ark Arc. Now, Yogi's Ark, for those of you who don't remember that was the Saturday Supercade movie that served as a pilot for Yogi's Game, which, of course, you can watch on MeTV Tunes weekdays at 12 Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, and Saturdays at 1:30 Eastern, all right, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific. So, anyways, 36 minutes. I might do the other one then. Let's see now. Yeah, I'm gonna, because I know I'm gonna probably be talking quite a bit here about. All right, so now what we're gonna do, we're gonna move on to the wrestling wrap up here. As of course, we will go back and look back at last night's WWE Raw, as well as looking ahead to tonight's NXT. But we also have some news to cover from TNA and AEW as well. So going over to TNA first, one of the other things that happened over the weekend was we already talked about Jordan Grace's contract, wrapping up at this past weekend's Genesis. I think Josh Alexander's contract is about to wrap up. There's supposedly, I saw something earlier today where apparently I guess he still has one. He's still obligated to come to one more show, which is this Thursday's live broadcast of Impact. At least according to a little scene I saw between him and Santino Marella, as Alexander had said he quit. But also apparently PCO's contract was coming to an end as well. Now the thing is that apparently PCO has not been too happy with how the new management has treated him. Of course, he's currently he was, I don't know if he still is considered, but he's currently the current reigning digital media and international champion in TNA, which led to, and apparently they were wanting him to come to the live taping to drop the titles, or at least drop the digital media title. Well, he didn't. He actually showed up at Game Changer Wrestling's event, the People versus GCW, this past Sunday at the Hammerstein Ballroom, in which after he won a Battle Royal match, he apparently decided to kind of go, as they call it, going into business. Cell decided to cut a shoot promo on TNA's management and proceeded to smash the digital media championship. Now, mind you, initially the way it was presented, people thought that this was going to be some kind of angle that was going to be worked between GCW and TNA and all that, but apparently nobody outside of PCO knew what was going on. GCW didn't. They cut the feed, as it were, for the moment. And then and TNA basically responded with shock and surprise. They had wanted him to come and drop the title, but from the looks of it, I think what apparently there was a they did extend an offer to him, On and basically a lot of this is, and part of the reason why, of course, Alexander and Grace left was because the management wanted them to come back for less money, and they weren't having it. And apparently, I guess initially, PCO agreed to come back, so they did have a verbal agreement. He just hadn't put pen to paper yet in terms of that. And they, of course, rescind. When after he, I guess, destroyed the digital media championship, which hadn't been really used a whole lot to begin with, in recent months. I mean, at one point it was a title that was a major title for like Matt Cardona, for Joe Hendry, for Jordan Grace, who was the first who was the first digital media championship. They hadn't been, it had become a mid card title, which a lot of people have been very critical of. But he destroyed it, and now the contract offer, of course, has been rescinded. So we don't know what will be. But this will be a story, obviously, that we'll keep an eye on. And we'll have more about TNA and some of the recent departures, because there is some, as recently announced, of course, WWE and TNA have signed a talent exchange program where we're gonna actually probably see more TNA talent crossing over to WWE and vice versa. Just like we saw in the midst of last year when Jordan Grace and Joe Hendry and the Rascals all were making appearances for on NXT and all that. We of course did see some appearances from NXT stars as Shante Adonis issued an open challenge on the pre-show. We also saw NXT Tag Team Champions Fraxium as well as Cora Jade also make appearances on Genesis this past Sunday. So we're going to be seeing more and more of that in the months and months to come. There's talk that, of course, now that Jordan Grace's that she fulfilled her, she could be making her debut with the WWE as a WWE signed talent as early possibly as tonight. There's been some talk that she and maybe even Josh Alexander may be making their debuts at Royal Rumble in about a couple weeks here. But again, we'll have to wait and see. Of course, there's also been some talk that Joe Hendry may also be part of the Royal Rumble as part of the talent exchange. So we'll wait and see on that. In some other news, some AEW news. So apparently Britt Baker is on the outs with. Apparently, the reason you haven't seen Britt Baker on AEW TV is because partly they don't have anything for her. Now, I don't know if she's still under contract or not. They haven't indicated that. But apparently, from what everybody's saying, I guess Tony Khan is pretty much fed up with her. A lot of people on AEW are fed up with her. So we'll just have to wait and see where that all goes. But, Britt Baker as well as Camille. Camille has been used poorly as well. I don't know if her contract's coming out. She signed about a year ago with AEW, and from the looks of it, according to some analyst perspective, they believe that the only reason Camille was signed to AEW was to keep her from being used by the WWE, which is kind of poopy. But anyways, so with that, let's look at let's go back to look back at last night's Monday Night Raw, and then we'll look ahead, of course, to tonight's NXT as well. So let's see, we're coming up on 45 minutes here, so we'll be wrapping up soon enough here. So on last night's Monday Night Raw, this is of course what all happened on last night's Monday Night Raw. Of course, Wade Barrett was filling in for Pat McAfee, and John Bradshaw Layfield guest commentated as well. The opening match saw Rey Mysterio defeat Kofi Kingston in a singles match in about 10.5 minutes. Also, Nia Jax defeated Bayley in a one-on-one match. Penta continued his strong start as he defeated Pete Dunne in a one-on-one match. Damage Control of Dakota Kai and Io Sky defeated Pure Fusion Collective of Shayna Baszler and Zoe Starks, continuing the feud between those two factions. And in the main event saw Seth Rollins defeat Drew McIntyre, what was believed to be possibly a possible dropping hints at a possible heel turn to come after after a little miscommunication when Sami Zayn came out to help Rollins fend off an post match attack from Drew McIntyre. But with all that, let's now look ahead, of course, to tonight's NXT from coming from the Performance Center in Orlando, WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. On tonight's match slated, Tony D'Angelo defends the NXT North American title against Ridge Holland, and Ova Femi will be defending the NXT title against Eddie Thorpe. So those are at least a couple of matches to look forward to tonight. So we're pretty much done with the wrestling route now. So now, with all that being said, today is, as I said, Tuesday, January the 21st, 2025. So let's take a look back at this date in Neat history. History! Alrighty then. So first up, I'm going to head back 60 years ago. And on this date, 60 years ago today, back in 1965, the 170th issue of Batman went on sale on this date back in 1965. Of course, he had two features in there: the genius of the getaway gimmicks and the puzzle of the perilous prizes. So, on this date, 60 years ago today, Batman, the 170th issue of Batman went on sale on this date back in 1965. All right, so moving ahead now to 1985, 40 years ago today. On this date, 40 years ago today, a sad day in the professional wrestling world, as Championship Wrestling from Florida promoter and wrestling legend Eddie Graham passed away at the age of 55. He had unfortunately committed suicide. He passed away, of course. He was inducted in the WWE Hall of Fame at the committed suicide. So let's see. Yeah. All right, so Eddie took over booking and promoting for Championship Wrestling in Florida in 1971. He wrestled with his son Mike Graham until 1977, when he retired from the ring due to health problems. He made a one-shot return to the ring for one final match in 1979, where he defeated Killer Khan by pinfall after the referee was knocked out, and subsequent interference by Mr. Hito and Kazuo Sakurada on Khan's behalf was fought off by Mike Graham and Ray Stevens. He was president of the NWA from 1976 to 1978, thanks in part to Gordon Soley and Dusty Rhodes. Graham was absent as NWA president in 1977 and 78 due to serious health problems he suffered from and was forced to step down as a result. Eddie remained as the promoter in Florida until January 21st, when he committed suicide by gunshot wound after a lifelong battle with alcoholism. He was, of course, inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. He was inducted posthumously by Dusty Rhodes, while his son Mike Graham accepted the honor on behalf of his father. So on this date, 40 years ago today, the passing of legendary Florida promoter and wrestler Mike Graham, Eddie Graham. Now moving on to the year 2000, 25 years ago today. On this date, 25 years ago today, let me see. Yeah. On this date, 25 years ago today, Sunrises the King of Braves Gao Gai Gar final OVA was released in Japan on this date back in 2000. So the Japanese Sunrises OVA, the King of Braves Gao Gai Gar final, was released in Japan on this date back in the year 2000, based off of the manga and anime of the King of Braves Gao Gai Gar. And finally, moving ahead to 2005, on this date in 2005, on this date in 2005, premiering on the Disney Channel, American Dragon Jake Long. Walt Disney Animations, the American Dragon Jake Long premiered on the Disney Channel on this date 20 years ago today in 2005. So with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. We'll be back here tomorrow night, of course, with more Niche news. Also, don't forget this Sunday, I'll be joined by Apex from Apex Comics. We look back on comics that went on sale in April 1940. This week we'll be looking at comics that went on sale from Novelty Press. So with that, I thank everybody for being here. I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.